Don't enter into life's arena unarmed. Let Parker show you how to make fear work for you. Even enjoy fear. What money says when it talks. The heartbeat of time. The vital importance of momentum. How to be the person you always wanted to be. And keeping your dreams alive. There is no man like this anywhere.
I am money, and I do talk, so you better listen to me. I can make your life wonderful, or I can make your life miserable. I can keep you up at night and make you toss and turn for hours when all you want to do is go to sleep. I can make you think you're sick when there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. I can start on you early in life and haunt you as long as you live. I can make a criminal out of someone who could have really been somebody. I am money, and I do have power. And I can break up great marriages too. I've done it plenty of times. You may think you're ignoring me, but I'm not ignoring you. I'm not going anywhere. I am money, and I do have power. I can give you a home that is so beautiful that when you wake up and look out the window, you'll know you live in paradise. Why, I can take you to beautiful places all around the world that most people only see on TV. And I can send your children to some of the finest colleges in the world. And I can give you the power to say yes to the people you love whenever you want to. And I'm not going to be ignored. And I'm going to touch every aspect of your life. Now, I'm either going to dictate to you or you're going to dictate to me. Now, the only decision that you got to make is what kind of relationship are we going to have? Man, when money talks, it's serious, real serious. You see, we live two different types of life. We have a money life and we have a personal life. And when our money life is going well, our personal life is more than likely going well also. But when our money life is struggling, I guarantee you our personal life is struggling. You see, there's only three kinds of money. There's old money, there's newfound money, and there's no money. Now, the first time I ever saw the huge, positive, powerful, life-changing impact that money could have upon a person's life was somebody right in my own family. I had an uncle who worked in a shipyard. He had a very good job in the shipyard, but he quit and went into the insurance business. And he moved 300 miles away with a pregnant wife. Now, he became successful very fast, even though he was new. And he was the talk of our family. You see, someone close to us, one of us, was doing something that we really didn't even think possible. Somebody close to us was doing this. What in the world is going on here? And I'll never forget one Sunday that we were all at my grandmother's farmhouse, and my mom and dad and my uncles and my cousins, and we were all there waiting for my uncle, who was in the insurance business, to arrive. And I was standing out in front of that farmhouse, looking out there at that asphalt main road, waiting for him to come down that road. And all of a sudden, I saw this gorgeous white luxury automobile come down that main road and turn down that dusty lane and come just driving real fast up to that farmhouse. And I started screaming, "He's here! He's here!" And everybody came running outside, and we all got around that automobile because nobody in my family had ever had anything like that. Now, let me tell you something. This guy was my hero. I'm telling you, he was my hero. Now, we all went up to the front porch, and we were just sitting around listening to him, and I was sitting right down there on the wood on that porch I was looking up at him, and I was listening to every word he had to say. He was telling us all about this new home that he had bought and that he had joined the country club. Country club. Can you imagine that? The country club? Now, his whole life had changed. It was very evident that his life had changed. You could see it. His dreams were alive. And again, I was listening to every word he was saying. Now, I didn't know it then, But this would be one of those life-changing times in my life, one of those defining moments. Now, if you took the time and you look back over your life, oh, you would find those defining times also. Now, my family moved to a shipyard town, and we moved into a neighborhood where just about everybody that lived in that neighborhood worked in the shipyard. We moved into a government project. All of the homes were exactly the same size, exactly the same color. Everybody in that neighborhood got paid the second Thursday of every month. All the refrigerators were empty on the second Thursday of every month. And I got a job as a newspaper boy. And I delivered newspapers to another part of town, to this very affluent neighborhood with these riverfront homes, with these manicured lawns, long winding driveways, beautiful automobiles, boats. Every day, when I would get on my bike and leave my neighborhood to go over and deliver those papers, it was like leaving one world and entering into another one. Now, I'm not saying that these people were any better than anybody in my neighborhood, but I'm going to tell you, they sure were different. Now, my dad worked in the shipyard, and he worked real hard. My friend Bunchy's dad worked in the shipyard, and he worked real hard. And my friend Kenny's dad worked in the shipyard, and he worked real hard. But what did they know that we didn't know? What was it? Something was going on here. Now, many years later, I did something that I really never wanted to do. I went to work in a shipyard. I didn't like it from day one. It had this real high fence all around the shipyard with barbed wire all on the top of it. And it had this real loud horn that was always blowing to let us know it was time to come to work, when we could go to lunch, when we could come back, and when it was time to get off. To me, it was like being in a prison. Now, there's nothing wrong with working in a shipyard. I got a lot of friends that still work in shipyards. But to me, it was a job. I mean, a job. A job to me is something that you get up in the morning and the thought of even going there, you don't even want to think about it. You hate it. On the way there, you can't stand it. It's like one of those settled for jobs. Yeah, a lot of you know what I'm talking about. Now, it's a good time to make a point. See, it doesn't make any difference where you work. You don't need to have a fence around wherever you work. But if you're miserable, hate your job, do you feel trapped? You'll discover as we go further along that there is a way out. Well, after about a year, I quit. And that night when my dad got home from work, I told him, I said, I quit my job in the shipyard. He said, you did what? I said, yeah, I quit. I said, I don't want to work there anymore. I just don't want to. I said, look, Dad, I'm proud of what you do, and I'm proud that you work in a shipyard, but it's just not for me. And he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, there was a highly successful and very much respected businessman that attended the same church that my family did. And I told my dad I was going to go see him the next morning. So I got up real early the next morning. I got out my best outfit and got a necktie. I didn't know how to tie it, so I had to get my dad to tie it for me. And when I got there, the man let me in his office, and I told him that I had quit my job at the shipyard. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to learn how to sell. That's what I want to do. Because I kept thinking about that uncle of mine and how successful he was in the life he was living. And he said, well, I'll give you some real good advice. You need to go where they have some real good training. So I'm going to send you down to see the local General Motors dealer. He's a real good friend of mine, and he'll let you in his office to see him. So I headed down there immediately. When I got there, the man did let me in his office, and I told him I wanted to learn how to sell. And he said, well, we don't really need anybody in the sales department, but we do need somebody in the service department. I said, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work with my hands anymore. And he said, well, I'm sorry, we just don't need anybody. And so the next day I came back again to see him again, and he said, look, we don't need anybody. We do have an opening in the service department. I said, nope, that's not for me. Next day, I walked right back up and stood right in front of his office again. I was right in the doorway, and he looked up and I said, hey, how you doing? I'm back. And he said, well, you sure are persistent. And I said, I want to learn how to sell. And he said, okay. He said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a job, but I'm going to put you on probation. You only got 30 days. You can't prove to me you can make it then, you're out of here. I said, fine. So he took me downstairs, and he introduced me to the general sales manager. He said, this is our new man, Parker Rogers, and he's going to go on the sales force. I'll never forget that first day I was on that sales floor. I was all nervous, and it was on a Saturday, and I was just standing around, and it got to be about 11 o'clock in the morning. There was a lot of people there, but I didn't go out and wait on anybody, and I didn't know it, but all the other salespeople had customers, and so my manager stepped outside, and he said, go over there and wait on that man. And I said, me? He said, yeah, you. I said, oh, okay. Man, I was moving so fast, I was just about running, and I went up to the man and introduced myself and said, hi, I'm Parker Rogers. I'm brand new. I never sold a car before. You're my very first customer. I mean, I never sold a car before. You're my first customer. I mean, I've just never sold one before. And finally he said, son, slow down, relax. He said, I'm going to buy a car from you. I said, you are? He said, yeah. I said, well, excuse me for a minute. I ran back into my manager's office. I said, he's going to buy a car from me. He just told me he was. He said, well, have you picked out one yet? I said, no. He said, well, I think that would be the next thing for you to do. So I said, okay. So I went back outside, and we did find one that this man liked, and he bought it. And after I'd finished that sale, I had one question that I wanted to ask my sales manager. I said, how much did I make? That's what I want to know. And when he told me how much I made, I couldn't believe it. I said, I made that much for doing that? He said, yes. I said, oh, come on now, seriously. How much did I make? And he said, no, that's exactly what you made. I'd never seen any money like this. I didn't make that much for working 6 days in a shipyard and working overtime. I couldn't believe it. Now, you talk about a whole life change. Now, not only did I find out real quick that I could do it, I could do this because, you know, the fears about can I do it and can I sell and can I do the paperwork, but I knew I could do it, and within an instant, it erased all of those feelings that I had about being trapped in that shipyard and was this the way life was going to be? And then you know how people can be those naysayers and doomsdayers? You mean you're going to quit that job and you're going to get into this? You better be thankful you got the job. Are you crazy? Within an instant, it erased that too. I mean, gone. I was like a whole new person. Now, by the way, here's a lesson. That's how fast it can really happen for any of us. That fast. By the way, if we're not careful, we will be better when we are new than we will ever be again. And here's another one. I'll never forget how I felt about that first commission. It was like a revelation to me, and I couldn't believe it. I'm working with this big company. They got a lot of money invested, and if I perform, they're willing to share it with me. I loved it. I couldn't believe it because in that shipyard, I got paid by the hour, and now I get paid by how many people I sell. Now, let me tell you something. There's a lot of people out there. And, boy, when I discovered this, every time I'd see somebody, I would see an opportunity. And the results I started getting were astounding. And to this day, when I see people, I see opportunity. And let me tell you again, there's so many of them out there, so many of these people, that it's mind-boggling. Now, you can call it commission, performance pay, incentive. Whatever you call it, it all means the same thing. It doesn't make any difference. Big companies, small companies, individuals, build your own business. Here's what I mean. Perform and get paid. Perform and win. To me, this is the way to live. Now, after a couple of days of being brand new in this sales force, I did go into the sales meeting room where they kept this big board with everybody's name on it and all of their results. And I wrote down the name of the top 4 producers, and I wrote down the names of the bottom 4, the ones that really weren't doing much. And I made an effort to find each one of them and watch what they were doing. And the difference was very clear. The top 4 were very busy, either with customers or doing something to find out how to get one, making phone calls, sending out postcards. They were very busy. The other ones, they were most of the time sitting around complaining in little groups. They'd come in the morning, sit around, drink coffee for an hour and a half. The next thing you know, they were talking about lunch, reading the paper, come back late from lunch. Later on, say, well, it's getting late. Why don't we do it again tomorrow? But these producers, I have the highest respect for those professionals. You see, there are 350,000 retail automobile salespeople in America, and it wouldn't make sense to think that every one of them was not honest, any more than it would make sense to think that every doctor is honest or that every lawyer is dishonest. It really wouldn't make sense. But I built a very good business because when I sold to people, I would sell to their families, their children, their grandparents, their neighbors, the people they worked with, and I asked them all for references. To this day, I'm a reference person. And I found out, hey, I was really good at this. I enjoyed being around people, and people enjoyed being around me. And again, remembering, there's a lot of people out there. It wasn't very long before I got myself a beautiful new automobile. And I opened a savings account at the bank, and I was putting money in there, and I had a great month. I mean, my first month was great. I took off like a rocket. See, when we make up our mind that we're going to do something, it's amazing how many other people make up their minds with us. And I was really thinking big, too. I mean, I had new dreams. And they built this gorgeous high-rise building in my hometown, and it was beautiful, the nicest thing in our town. We never had anything like that. And so one day, I drove down there, and I got the real estate agent to take me on a tour of this building. I mean, it had the swimming pool. It was on the water. It was gorgeous. And I wanted to live there. I mean, when I saw it, I wanted it. And when I left there, I said to myself, okay, I want it. Remember this, making up your mind. I want it. Now, to be able to move in there, I got to take it up to another level. I made up my mind. And it wasn't long before I was living in that building. Now, after a few years of doing this, I opened my own business in Virginia, and I became very successful. And then I expanded it into New York City and was successful there. And then I expanded overseas. And I lived in Virginia and in New York City, and I spent a lot of time in both places and in Europe. And as I tell you about opening all of these businesses and this growth in my life, everything points back. Everything points right back to that commission, that performance pay, when I found out that I was in charge of my own life, my own destiny, what I could make, what I could wear, where I wanted to live, what I could do. Everything goes right back to that time. And then I bought a 3-story beach home, beautiful home, and I started buying a lot of real estate. Now, remembering that I'm an ex-shipyard worker. And then I made the biggest investment that I had ever made in my life. I bought a piece of commercial property in a real prime location. This was a lot of money. And I was going to build a shopping center with these beautiful, unique shops and fabulous restaurants. And I had designers design all these plans for this project that were in La Jolla in California. But it wasn't long before I found out that I had not properly prepared myself. There was a lot of local politics going on that I didn't know about. There was a lot of people that didn't want to see me build this, and I didn't even know who they were. It's like every time I'd try to go get a building permit, I'd get turned down. And then I'd go back and I'd get the architects to redesign it, and I'd go back again, and they'd turn me down again. And this just went on. And a lot of things started going wrong in my life. And slowly but surely, my world started to crumble. But one of the biggest mistakes I made was ignoring the things that got me there. I'm talking about the things that provided the money, and this is about money, for everything in my life. I can tell you I was foolish. I was very foolish. And it got so bad that I felt like I couldn't stop it. I just got deeper and deeper into debt. A lot of people were asking, what's happening to him? What's going on? And I started making a lot of foolish decisions. and I was really getting into serious financial trouble. Right in the middle of that nightmare, I found out that my father had cancer from asbestosis, and they gave him 6 months to 1 year to live. I tell you, my whole world was falling apart. And I was living in what I call a very unsafe place. And this is not a good environment for any family. A very unhappy place. Because when money gets short, it's also a very insecure place with constant upheaval. And it can break up marriages. Fortunately for me, it didn't break up mine. But I'll tell you, the lack of money can make you feel like a lesser person. Now, talk about low self-esteem and constant worry about money not having enough can steal our peace from us and fill us full of stress because then we can't think straight. It's like we don't see a way out and you feel so overwhelmed because the lack of money is screaming at us 24 hours a day, deal with me, deal with me. It's like it won't leave us alone. And what we're doing when we're in this terrible financial position, it's like we're just struggling for bill money. And a little problem can become a big monster. A utility bill can become huge when before, to me, it was really nothing. And here's the thing. Oh, then when you have to go crawling to somebody to borrow money, like that begging. Now talk about a worthless feeling, something demeaning. I did that. Well, you talk about a life of uncertainty, and it can become very embarrassing. It's a scary thing to think about because our children can catch this from us too. I was recently watching television where about an 8-year-old girl said, I hate money. I hate money. My parents argue about money all the time. I hate money. Here's an 8-year-old child that really doesn't understand money at all, but she hates it. You know, this is really no way to live. And I know that no one should live this way in a free society. But I'm going to tell you that the lack of money was at the heart of the majority of my problems. And it got so bad that I knew I was going to have to claim bankruptcy. And I was really embarrassed, and I felt ashamed, and I felt like that I was going to humiliate my family. It was going to be in the newspaper, and everybody was going to find out. And I really wanted to tell my father before he read it in the newspaper. So I called my mom one day and told her that I wanted to talk to him. And she said, well, I'm driving your father to the doctor's office for another chemotherapy treatment. And she said, there's a shopping center right across the street from the doctor's office, and I'll meet you there in about 45 minutes. And when they got there, I was waiting, and I got in the back seat of the car, and I started telling him about all of my problems and my financial problems. I got very emotional, and I started crying. And here was this terminally ill man, and he turned around and looked at me, and he said, would you like to trade places? Wow. And then he said, you got yourself into this mess, and you can get yourself out of it. About a month later, I did claim bankruptcy, and I lost everything. I lost all of my development property and my investments. I lost my home, my cars. I lost everything except my furniture. I borrowed a Ford van from a friend of mine, and I had it backed up in the driveway of that home that I had to leave. I'd loaded the last of the furniture, and I was loading the last piece of furniture in that van. And after I did, I walked around the side of that van, and my wife was sitting in the passenger seat, and I looked at her, and she had her eyes closed, and she had her hand over her eyes. And I can see her right now, and I said to myself, I wonder what in the world is she thinking? She probably was thinking, how in the world did we get into this mess? Are we ever going to be able to get out of it? My son was a little guy, and he was playing on the steps that ran up the side of the house. And I looked at him, and I said, come on, we got to go. And he didn't respond. And again, I said, come on, we got to go. And he still didn't respond. And I went over and picked him up. I said, come on, we got to go. And he said, I don't want to go. Well, he didn't want to leave his friends.
This is the end for this deposit.